All right. So basically here we saw there are two kinds of data that we like to deal with. There's quantitative data and qualitative data. Now, quantitative data, remember, that's the kind of data that you can perform, what do you call it, numerical calculations with, like adding, subtracting, average, that kind of thing. Qualitative data is the other kind of data, basically the stuff that you can't perform calculations with. So I know quantitative data, for instance, you could do like scores on an exam, like number scores, that is, like out of 10, people would get scores like 8, 5, 7, 12, that, well, excuse me, not 12, 2 or 1, that kind of stuff. Whereas qualitative might be like letter grades, like A, B, C, D, E, that kind of thing. Now, we like to present this kind of data, because we like to show results. And so what we're going to do, what we like to do, that is we like to use different kinds of graphs to present the data. So let's focus first on qualitative data, okay? The first kind of table we can present is what we call a frequency table. Now, a frequency table, I think I might have done this last time, but I feel better doing it again. It's really just a table with two columns. There's not too much to it. One column, of course, you would list all the possible values of the variable. I mean, we'll see an example shortly, but for instance, if you were to look at, like with the exam scores, let's say, like I said before, and the variable would be the letter grade. So one output would be A, another value would be, grade B and C and D and so on. That's one column. So basically one column, you're going to have the values of the variable or your qualitative data, so to say. The other column will be your frequency. The frequency, basically, the amount, in other words, how many items there are in that category. You'll see also today, what we can do is actually consider what's called a relative frequency column. And that's really what you're doing, is you're taking the frequency and dividing by the sum. That's really all it is. You'll see that you basically take the frequency and divide by the sum of all the frequencies. You'll get a fraction, which you can write as a percentage, and from there you can say, okay, well, about what percentage of the students got a letter A in that example I just said, or what percentage of respondents were in this category, that kind of thing. All right, well, here's our first example. Again, it's all hypothetical, but a teacher goes around, is at a survey in school, and what she does is she asks the students their favorite color. What is their favorite color? How does she give out the survey? For now, that doesn't matter. But these are the respondents. There were 136 students here, okay? There's 136 students. And this is the data we got. So 25 students said blue, 40 said orange, 21 said green, and so on. And you can probably guess from the statement here, but if you were to add these frequencies, you get 136, which is expected, though. That's really all there is to a frequency table. There's not too much to it. You can see, though, we're displaying qualitative data, like what your favorite color is. I mean, if you look at the colors alone, there's not much calculation you can do with that. You can't add blue and orange and get another color. You can't, take an average of them. That doesn't really make sense. In the frequency numbers, you can. And there we go. And we can add a relative frequency column. Again, as I said before, we get the total. The total, as we said, you add up the frequencies, 136. And the relative frequency is you're taking the frequency right? And dividing by the sum. So for blue, you get a relative frequency of 25 over 136, which if you convert to a percentage, you get 18.38%. Orange, there was 40 over 136, which is 29.41%, you know, and so on and so forth. You keep doing that. Other good stuff. And of course, if you add these up, you should get 1. That's kind of a, I guess, a duh. If you add them up, you should get 1. Okay. You know, so for here, for instance, we can see that so that if 18.38% of the responders, you know, the students that is, said their favorite color is blue, about 11% said their favorite color is white, and so on and so forth. That's what the relative frequencies are. Okay. So really that's it with a frequency and relative frequency table. I mean, you can see there's not much visualization there other than showing off a table. What we could do is we can display the same data another way using what's called a bar graph. So I guess a frequency table, yeah, it's visual, but it's not like as visual that you would expect. We have what's called a bar graph though. You might have seen it before. If you haven't, that's okay. The idea there is, as it says here, you have a vertical and a horizontal axis. And basically on the vertical axis, you have the frequencies. We'll see an example shortly. With the horizontal axis, though, you have the possible values of the qualitative variable. So let me say that again. I was going to draw one by hand, but we'll see an example shortly. In fact, we'll make one as well. You could draw it by hand. I'm not going to have you draw these by hand because I figured it's an online class, so I figured it'd be better we can skip over that. Excuse me. Basically, again, you have kind of like when you're drawing the X and Y axis, like in other math courses, you have a vertical axis, a horizontal axis. On the vertical axis, you have your frequencies. On the horizontal axis, you have your qualitative variable, you have the values of those. So if we went back to this frequency table, on the horizontal axis, as you'll see, we would have blue, orange, green, and so on. On a vertical axis, you would have your frequencies, excuse me. And basically what would happen is you would draw a bar, that's the name bar graph, above each of these variables, each of these values. And the bar would have height equal to the frequency. So the bar's height, that's what I'm saying here, would be the frequency. Oh, there we go. I mean, this is one example. Okay, this is one example actually of a bar graph. Shortly, I'm going to actually illustrate how to make one. You'll see, I do provide the screenshots from Google Sheets, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to go through it as well. Because Google Sheets, you know, it's free. You can access it through the internet very easily. So, I mean, I don't know if all computers have Excel or not. That's why I'm sticking with Google Sheets. But Excel can make these as well. This is an example of a bar graph, as you can see, right? You can see we have a horizontal, we have a vertical axis, although I guess the line isn't drawn, but it's still technically there, even though we can't see it. But you can see the frequencies are listed here. The horizontal one, right, axis, that has, in this case, the colors, which are the values of the qualitative variable. And as I just said before, over each one, you're going to draw a bar whose height is the frequency. Right, so the blue from the bars, you can see it's about like halfway between 20 and 30. So, okay, so it's about 25. Orange 40, as you can see. Let me just check. Orange is 40, as we can see. Okay? Right? I'm reading these off because remember, you're going to have to read these as well. We'll do that later. If not today, then definitely next time. It's good to read these. I don't think the book actually has you make these, but it's good to actually be able to read them. I mean, getting ahead of myself. Green, also same idea, right? It's a little more than 20, and now this is, I guess, like what? Like 20. So you might have to estimate a bit looking at the graph. So I would say about 21 or so. You can even see, I know it's over here, but you can see by looking at the graph. So, you keep on doing that for each one of these bars. Good. All right. So basically, you will have to read these as well as make them. I'll say this now. The homework is actually on chapter 9. It's not on chapter 10. Also because I didn't finish chapter 10, so I figured it wouldn't be right to give you homework on that. And the exam also will be everything from the first exam up to, but not including chapter 10. Okay? I'll post that later as well, but it won't be on chapter 10. All right. Let me just